What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? D-backs drop series to the LA Dodgers, but is there still a silver lining?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and my graphic designer. So please go check out my website, MillardThomas24downmyportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we'll talk about the D-backs dropping their series to the LA Dodgers, some lineup adjustments I would like to see Arizona make, and then we'll update the belief meter on the D-backs winning the NL West. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. All right, let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about that series loss to the LA Dodgers because it was frustrating to watch because we came into this series with such high hopes that maybe we would come on this podcast Monday night and talk about how the D-backs are tied for the division and the driver's seat for the division, whatever the case may be. I thought the D-backs at worst were going to split that series against LA Dodgers. I definitely thought they were going to win the finale. I might have put a little wager down on FanDuel for the D-backs to win Monday's Labor Day game. It did not happen, and in the end, D-backs dropped 3 of 4 to the LA Dodgers, and the Dodgers once again get to walk away from at least the regular season and feel like the big brothers to Arizona. Of course, in the postseason, we know it's been a different story in recent history, but at least for the rest of this regular season, the Dodgers can say that they own the D-backs once again. This could have been the first D-backs, season victory against the Dodgers since 2018, where they owned the head-to-head record. They were tied with them 6-6 entering Labor Day, and then, of course, the D-backs lost Labor Day 11-6, and really just a disappointing loss after having such a fun and fantastic win in Game 3, where it felt like you were building momentum again. You were crushing them offensively. The Dodgers kind of did the reverse of game number 3 in the finale, with their offense really taking it to the D-backs and the D-backs kind of playing on their heels the whole game. Did feel like at one point the D-backs were potentially going to rally, especially after seeing the bottom of the 7th. I thought maybe this was going to be a game where the D-backs go down 6-1, and then it ends up being a fantastic story of triumph for Arizona and potentially come back against the Dodgers and deliver a big win. I would have loved to seen it. I would have loved to see the sadness on all Dodgers fans' faces if that happened. But unfortunately, it did not. The Dodgers played a great game. Their offense just dominated the D-backs in this one. Teoscar Hernandez, 5 for 5, and you go up and down their lineup. Ohtani, 2 hits. Mookie, 2 hits. Freeman, 2 hits. Teoscar, 5 hits. Will Smith, 2 hits. I mean, the top 5 guys in their lineup absolutely destroyed the Arizona Diamondbacks. Meanwhile, on the other side, the D-backs were 2 for 9 with a runner in scoring position, and we'll talk about in segment number 2 how I did not like some of the lineups I saw this series, and really with the injuries the last couple weeks, I think there's been some lineups I've just not been a fan of that Torey Lovullo has thrown out. I feel like the Dodgers do a great job of stacking the best hitters at the top of their lineup, and I don't think the D-backs do enough of that. That's why in segment number 2, I want to talk about the lineup and give some pointers to Torey Lovullo. Obviously, I'm not a manager. He knows way more baseball than me, but for some reason, it feels like all D-backs fans on Twitter are in consensus of how the lineup should be stacked up or who should be hitting at the top of the lineup. Meanwhile, Torey always feels like he puts the hottest hitters in the second half of the lineup. So we'll talk about it in segment number 2. But this was a series where the D-backs, the pitching really failed Arizona. That was really the story of this series. The pitching was not good enough. Brandon Pfaadt, I mean, he had the best start, but even him later in that game was starting to get touched up a little bit. Zach Gallen, some of the other guys in this rotation, I mean, everyone outside Ryan Nelson has been struggling in the month of August, and they struggled in this series against the LA Dodgers. And in the finale, Erod, I mean, he was laboring 92 pitches through 4 innings, and he only threw 53 strikes. Like, his issue was he was not throwing enough strikes, and when he did, it was not fooling the Dodgers hitters. A lot of base hits off Erod, a lot of loud and hard contact too. Monty, it says 3 earned runs given up, but I actually did not mind the way Monty looked. I thought he actually looked fine on the mound today. Yes, the numbers might tell you a different story when you look at that ERA. But Monty's biggest problem from the game was the fact that he couldn't keep Shohei Ohtani on first base. I mean, Ohtani were just staring down Monty and then took off like first pitch, did the same when he took third base. And that was really the biggest issue, because once he let him on with less than 2 outs, it was pretty easy for the Dodgers to bring home Ohtani. And then right after that, he gets the comebacker off the leg, 94 miles per hour. And then Monty has to eventually leave the game right after that. He gets taken out by the trainer, and it felt like it was actually a fine Monty outing. It was one of the best outings I've seen from Monty, to be honest. I thought he was cruising. I thought it would have been fine if we kept him out there. Then Slade Cecconi comes in, and Slade is cooked, guys. I am off the Slade bandwagon. I used to like him. I thought he was fine last year. I liked him coming into the season, but we are off Slade Cecconi. He is not good any longer. I don't care how many options he has left. DFA him, stop playing him on the major league roster, whatever the case is. Slade Cecconi is not a good major leaguer anymore, and he is a big reason why the D-backs lost this game, because I do believe if Monty does not leave with that comebacker, the D-backs would have had an opportunity to win this game tonight, and they did not get the opportunity. Slade was awful, and I didn't even know if we were going to go to Paul Sewald. I thought maybe Torrey was going to let Slade wear this one, but the Dodgers hitters were so locked in on everything that Slade was throwing that you had to take him out, because I think typically you leave Slade in that kind of situation to save the pen, but 7 hits and 5 earned runs allowed in just 1 inning of work for Slade. The pitching was horrendous from this series. The starting pitching was awful, and the bullpen shaky as well. But the silver lining from this series, the offense for the D-backs technically outscored LA this weekend, and the offense was really good despite having half the team out. The D-backs still had an offense good enough to battle the LA Dodgers night after night, and this is like kind of the best version that we're going to see of the Dodgers. Obviously, you could potentially get Glass now, or maybe a Yamamoto back, but this is kind of closer to the ceiling of the Dodgers than closer to the ceiling of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so the fact, yes, the D-backs lost 3 out of 4 games, but they did outscore the Dodgers in this series. And I think it was closer than maybe what the series standings tell you from this series, because I do think when you look at the scores, when you look at the offenses from these 4 games from these two teams, I think it was a lot closer of a series than maybe that 3-1 in the final scoreboard showed us. And so D-backs, they lose to the LA Dodgers, but I still think there's some silver linings there, and I wouldn't feel too low on myself if I'm a D-backs fan. We know Dodgers love their regular season. They love the NL West. This is their World Series. This is what they live for. If we took the NL West from them, what would they have? And so I'm not too concerned. I'm still hoping to see the Dodgers in the postseason, because I would love to eliminate them once again. So tough beat for the D-backs, but I wouldn't hold my head too low if I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan. But one way they could have won this series potentially is with better lineups. So we'll talk about some lineup adjustments in segment number 2. And if you want to win some money by betting on the D-backs, then the place you need to go to do that is, of course, going to be FanDuel, because you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll always be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. My favorite thing to do on FanDuel is the same game parlay. Give me D-backs money line. Give me Corbin Carroll over on total bases, and give me Eugenio Suarez RBI. When that hits, it brings a big smile to my face. And if you want a big smile on your face, just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 or look up Locked On Diamondbacks. And please follow the personal on Instagram as well, Millard.Thomas123, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks on IG as well. Let's talk about the lineup situation for the Arizona Diamondbacks, because I was not a huge fan of some of the lineups I saw this past week for the D-backs against the LA Dodgers. And with the current state of affairs with Moreno, Walker, Marte, and now all of a sudden, Lord Gurriel left the second to last game of the series with a little calf tightness. Haven't really gotten an update on him. The D-backs need some bodies in their lineup, and they are down bad. They are battling attrition right now. It sounds like we got some guys coming back potentially this week against the San Francisco Giants, but until that's the case, I'm going to give Torrey what I think is the best way he should build the lineup with so many guys out. I think this is the best way to do it, because I like Torrey, but just too much prioritization when it comes to the platoon splits. Too much picking guys based off if there's a righty or lefty on the mound, as opposed to just picking your best dudes, stacking your lineup with your best players at the top. That's what the best teams in the sport do. It's not like you see Freddie Freeman bat #2 when there's a righty on the mound, and then bat 6 or 7 when there's a lefty on the mound. Like, every team out there, every contender out there, just make sure their best players bat at the top of every game. Whether it's a righty or a lefty on the mound, that's what those managers and players do. And for the D-backs, we don't get the same treatment. You could have a guy batting .800 for a 3-month stretch, and Torrey be like, he's a righty. Gotta put him #7 with a righty on the mound. Like, that's where I really get upset with Torrey Lovullo, where I want him to use maybe more feel, maybe just use his eye test and stop looking at, righty versus lefty. I gotta go with this situation, because at times I just do not agree with what Torrey is doing when it comes to the platoon splits. In game 2, he had Pavin hitting both above Adrian Del Castillo and Eugenio Suarez. I hate it when Torrey Lovullo does something like that. Pavin actually hasn't been that bad at the plate this year, so I will give him that. But Eugenio has been so hot since July 1st. Entering today's game, Eugenio Suarez, 156 WRC plus, 296 average, 344 OBP, and a 613 slugging. Second most home runs on this D-backs team, or actually tied for the most home runs after his home run today with Corbin Carroll. Both of them 17 home runs since July 1st. Monster power. But yet we're batting Eugenio Suarez behind Pavin Smith. Adrian Del Castillo, 158 WRC plus since July 1st. He's also batting behind Pavin Smith in game 2. Game 3, we had Jake McCarthy and Suarez batting 6th and 7th, 2 of the hottest players in this D-backs lineup. And then the game today, again, Suarez batting 7th behind Pavin Smith. And how is Pavin Smith playing left field over Randall Grichuk? With the team down so bad with injuries, you have to play your best players at the top, and you just have to play your best players overall. I don't care about the platoon situation. Grichuk needs to play over Pavin Smith offensively and defensively in the outfield. That is why I'm going to tell you how I would stack up the lineups with our current state of health. Against the lefties, Corbin Carroll leadoff, Jake McCarthy second, Randall Grichuk third, Eugenio Suarez fourth, Josh Bell 5th, Kevin Newman 6th, Jorge Barrosa 7th, Jose Herrera 8th, and then Geraldo Perdomo 9th. Carroll has been swinging the bat way too well for me to just drop him against the lefties. I know he still struggles more against lefties than righties, but Carroll is also, again, tied for the most home runs on this D-backs team since July 1st, a 611 slugging during that time. Like, he's been swinging too well, too much power for Corbin Carroll. I mean, he's smacking the ball right field, left field, off the wall. It's being sprayed all around the ballpark. Carroll needs to be locked into a top 3 spot in the lineup. Jake McCarthy has crushed lefties all season. I have no problem batting him number 2 against the lefties. Of course, Grichuk, he's being DH when there's a lefty on the mound. Suarez, I think, has to move up to the cleanup hitter. Like I said, he's been swinging too well over the last couple months. I have so much confidence now in Suarez, which is crazy. I think we talked about this on the podcast the other day. You look at Eugenio Suarez, you look at his numbers this season compared to years past. If he keeps this pace up for the rest of September, Eugenio Suarez is going to have one of his better seasons in the last few years. He's probably going to have more RBIs this season than maybe any season since 2019. He's got more home runs than what he had last year. He's going to have fewer strikes, maybe his lowest strike total since like 2018. His OPS currently is higher than 2 of the last 3 seasons. Like, Eugenio Suarez is going to end the year with one of his better seasons than like the last 5 or 6 years. And it's crazy to think about, but yet that guy's batting 7th while Pavin Smith is batting 6th. I just don't understand. Move Suarez up to the cleanup hitter. Bell, he's basically just a home run threat at this point. He needs to be batting number 5. And then Jorge Barrosa, I want to see him play a little bit more dynamic. He's got some speed, he's got some hitting ability. Can we see him batting number 7 potentially as the DH for the D-backs? In this scenario, where there's a lefty on the mound, since Grichuk is going to be playing in the outfield with Lourdes Gurriel out. And then again, Geraldo Perdomo, number 9. I don't like Perdomo as the leadoff hitter. I think he has great plate discipline, but I want to see Perdomo as the number 9 hitter with that plate discipline so you could get some RBI production for Corbin Carroll. So that's how I would do my lineup against lefties. But if there's a righty on the mound, again, Carroll leadoff, Jake McCarthy 2. Now is Jock Peterson over Grichuk number 3, Suarez 4, Josh Bell 5, Adrian Del Castillo 6, Grichuk 7, Luis Guillorme 8, and then Perdomo 9. I got Jock in for Grichuk as the DH in this situation. Well, technically, it's Jock filling in for Jorge Barrosa as the DH, but Jock now gets to go to number 3. Grichuk, I still have in the lineup. You could potentially do Barrosa over Grichuk because Barrosa is a switch hitter, but I think Grichuk, we've seen him a little bit more. He's a veteran. He's established. I would keep him in the lineup despite, not being platoon situation smart. I would still keep the Grichuk in the lineup with Lourdes Gurriel out. Suarez, I'm still keeping as the cleanup hitter against righties because that's how good he's been. ADC, lefty, like him as the number 6. Like I said, Grichuk is 7, Luis number 8, and then again, Perdomo number 9. I like the way these two lineups stack up a lot more than what Torey Lovullo has been throwing out there. You get to have Carroll and Jake always at the top of your lineup. You get Suarez as your cleanup hitter. You move Bell back a little bit. Just keep him as a power hitter. ADC, I think, is in a better, smarter spot as your number 6. Now your lineup also feels deeper, especially against righties when you have Grichuk now as your number 7 hitter. And then if you realize from these two lineups, you know who I don't have? Pavin Smith. Pavin, I think, is fine, but I think he's better when he's available off the bench. Lefty, back up to Josh Bell's a first baseman. There's just not really a spot for him to play, even with all these injuries. Where can he play? He's not a good defender at first. He's not a good defender in the outfield. And offensively, he offers you like singles, and that's about it. Not a lot of power, not really a lot of extra base hits, not really doing small ball with Pavin, not a lot of speed. So it's like, just put him on the bench with a Kevin Newman, with whoever the backup second baseman is and whoever the backup catcher is, they all go to the bench with Pavin Smith. I think that's fine. If Torey Lovullo did this, I think it would stack up his players a lot better. We see the Dodgers, Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar, Will Smith, they put all their best players at the top of the lineup. I just want to see the D-backs do that a little bit more moving forward. And now we'll talk about the D-backs belief meter in winning the NL West in segment number 3. But hey, if you want to buy tickets to an upcoming D-backs game, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be Game Time, because Game Time is the best place for last-minute tickets. It was the place I went to get tickets for D-backs versus Dodgers on Labor Day, because they did a sweet deal where it was 50% off. But don't worry, Game Time always has sweet deals. It's the best place for last-minute tickets, not just for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They even have this feature called all-in pricing. When you toggle that feature on, you can see the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. They even have the lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's do our little belief meter on how we feel about the D-backs still winning the NL West, because when we did this meter last week, D-backs were coming off I think they were coming off the sweep last week, right? Right before their next series against the New York Mets. I think we were talking about on the podcast last week about how at this time, right? Let's rewind it a week. Let's pretend this is last Sunday. I remember on the podcast last Sunday, we were saying, hey, this time next week, the D-backs could be in the driver's seat for first place. It could have just came off the sweep of the LA Dodgers. Everything could be going the D-backs' way. Sadly, that did not happen. The D-backs lost 3 out of 4 to LA. They are now 6 games back in the NL West standings, and it feels like the Dodgers are running away now, potentially with the NL West, unless the Padres could get hot. But I'm going to concede the division. Yes, there's still a chance, but my belief meter in the D-backs winning the NL West, currently a 3. Last week it was a 6. I was feeling good. D-backs were riding some momentum. If they split or won the series against the Dodgers, that number could have moved to like a 7 or 8. I would have thought the D-backs were definitely going to catch the Dodgers if they won this past series. But losing 3 out of 4 and now falling to 6 games back, I'm going to put the belief meter at a 3. Again, the Dodgers, regular season team, and this is what they play for. They love division titles. They have more division banners than any other team in the NL West. That is what they do. So not a surprise to see them play like the more desperate team in this series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they can have the division title because the D-backs got their eyes set on something a little bit bigger, another World Series appearance, and this time they want to complete it by getting the victory, and they're not going to do it in a small 60-game sample size. No, 162 plus the postseason. That's the mission that the D-backs are on. So we'll concede the NL West for now. It's more of a conversation for the D-backs. How hard do we want to go for the top spot in the wild card race? Currently, it looks like the Padres are going to be in the driver's seat. Let's see. They are currently playing right now, and so they could be in the driver's seat if they win today's game for the top wildcard spot. D-backs still play the Padres 2 more times this season, so a lot still on the line in the wildcard race. And again, we've talked about on the podcast before, the D-backs really want to get crazy. The true wild card spot I want is the 3rd wild card. Now, I'm not in favor of the D-backs trying to lose games to get that 3rd wild card. I don't want to deal with the stress. I don't want to deal with the bad karma, because I think that's really bad for the sports gods to try and lose games. But in a perfect world, the D-backs just slow down a little bit where they get that 3rd wild card spot and they get to face Milwaukee in the wild card round. Because I'll tell you this, the D-backs play the Brewers again in the wild card round. The D-backs are walking away with that victory. I'm not scared of Milwaukee at all in the postseason, but San Diego in the wild card round, that does give me some fear. That does give me a little trepidation. San Diego, NL West team, just one of those situations where I think you throw away the stats, throw away the numbers, because those two opponents would be so familiar with each other. And so D-backs do have to think about winning just enough so they could get that 3rd wild card spot. But again, I don't want to put that kind of bad karma in the world. So D-backs will definitely try to get that top wild card spot, which is what they should do, and try to be home field advantage for the wild card round and invite San Diego to come play in your building. But before you face San Diego, you got to face another NL West opponent in California in the San Francisco Giants, who is up next. The Giants are a team who, I guess, let me look at the wild card standings. Do they still have a little bit of life in the standings? They're 6.5 games back at the time of me recording this podcast. So the Giants, more or less, are pretty wrapped up in the wild card race, minus 20 run differential. I think the Giants potentially for next season could be interesting if they add to that lineup. I like the Giants rotation a lot. If you could bring back Snell, Robbie Ray, Kyle Harrison, Logan Webb, like you do have a playoff rotation if you're the Giants. For me, I always hate the Giants lineup. I never think the ceiling is high enough. They need some more just quality star players. They don't have enough talent in that lineup. And so if they could do that, I could see them being feisty for next season. But for right now, the Giants, I don't think are desperate enough. I don't know how hard they're really trying to go to make it to the playoffs this year, like 6.5 games back. You might just be playing for the good vibes to, instill that winning culture mentality in your younger players and just to see who you have and who you want to bring back for next season. And that might be the point where the Giants are right now. Dbacks are 4-3 against the Giants, I believe, this season. Where is San Francisco on Baseball Reference? I was just looking at this. Oh, I'm looking at the Giants. That's why. So Giants, yes, they're 3-4 against the D-backs this season. D-backs 4-3 against the Giants. So they already own the tiebreaker. Looking at the pitching matchups for this series, for the D-backs, they're going to have Ryan Nelson game 1, Zach Allen game 2, Merrill Kelly game 3. So we should at least start 1-0 with our best starter on the mound in game 1. Harrison, Birdsong, Blake Snell, the 3 for the San Francisco Giants. So I think it should be a good series. And again, anytime you face an NL West opponent, I think it's going to be a close series. But this should be a series where the D-backs take 2 out of 3, get back to building some momentum, get back to taking that top wild card spot from the San Diego Padres. And let's, start playing good baseball as we get closer to the postseason. Most importantly, that rotation, the pitching needs to start playing better. So let's see them start to step it up. Merrill Kelly, Zach Allen, you both have a start in this series against the Giants. Let's see a quality start by each of you guys because they have both been struggling in the month of August. It is now September, so let's see the rotation start to turn it around because right now that is the biggest cause for concern. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.